Hey, this is Billy Tesh with Crawl Space Depot. We're here today to show you how to properly close your crawl space. A closed crawl space is very simply eliminating the outside air that normally occurs in a ventilated crawl space. That's where you have vents around the outside of your house that allow air from the outside to enter the crawl space to help in the drying mechanism that used to be needed within a crawl space. But that was a common practice, especially years ago when we didn't have air conditioning. One of the problems that we have in ventilated crawl spaces is very simply when you add air conditioning to the structure, you create dew points. You're cooling down surfaces that under normal circumstances years ago, we didn't have air conditioning, didn't have the problem. So ventilation was a good thing, but when you close the crawl space, you're stopping that situation from occurring, which is very important. So what we do essentially is create an envelope to prevent this outside air from entering the crawl space. We're sealing the vents, sealing up penetrations that occur from the outside of the house into the crawl space. They could be plumbing penetrations where your ductwork goes through, maybe where gas lines or electrical lines go through. You want to seal all of those penetrations up. And obviously you want to seal the foundation vents. And not just closing those vents, but creating a permanent seal and locking that air out from the outside so it can't get to the inside. Then we're installing a number of other things. We're installing insulation on the outside walls. It's very important to understand that what you want to do is create this thermal envelope. So if you don't have insulation between your floor joists, installing an appropriate insulation board on the outside walls protects your investment from this thermal energy loss that you would receive every month of every year. One of the reasons that we like Borafoam is because it has termite prevention built within the board itself. So installing this on walls that are exposed to the weather stops that outside either hot in the summertime, cold in the wintertime from negatively influencing your house. The other thing that you want to do is install a very good, durable vapor barrier. Very important, because what we're wanting to do is stop that moisture that would be evaporating from the soil and getting up into the house. So there's some of those processes are involved. The other thing that you need to do is install some form of drying mechanism within the crawl space. It can be a dehumidifier or it can be an air inducer, which takes a metered amount of air, depending on the size of your crawl space, and introduces that into your crawl space. What that does is prevent moisture from building up and dries out that air. Makes it more like the inside of your house, which is what you want. If your crawl space is more acclimated to the inside of your house, much better environment, and you don't have it working against you like you would a ventilated crawl space. Several things that you benefit from are indoor air quality is improved. Of course, energy savings, as much as 18% on the average home compared to a crawl space that is ventilated to the outside air. Now, if you have an older home that you don't have insulation in, your energy efficiency is going to be much better than that. And of course, everything within the environment in that crawl space is much better. So your heating and air conditioning unit is going to last longer, it's going to perform better, and fewer insects. Let's talk about stack effect. What occurs within your house when you have these hot summer months with the attic getting real hot, having all this air movement out? Some people even have power fans that create additional load on this stack effect. What happens with all of these situations? You have this negative air conditioning. That's air being sucked out of the house through the attic, and as a result of that, you create a makeup need. So all this air that's leaving the attic's got to get replaced with some other air within the house or outside the house. The other situation that occurs is that this crawl space air is used as a makeup point. So we need to look at that as an entity and what goes on within that crawl space and how we can stop that condition from negatively affecting the house. Some studies have shown as much as 60% of the bad air in the house originates from the crawl space. Who wants that? I don't, and you certainly don't. That will affect a lot of things within the house. People that are suffering from asthma, compromised health conditions, that creates a lot of problems for them. So we need to stop this negative air situation. We need to stop this condition of bad air getting from the crawl space to the house. The other thing that occurs and what causes some of this problem is in the hot summer months, we bring warm, moist air from the outside into the crawl space, and it condensates on a lot of surfaces. Dew point is what we're looking at. The dew point is a condition in which moisture condensates on surfaces. And there's a lot of colder surfaces in the crawl space that allow this dew point to occur. So what we want to do is cut that off. One of the problems with having moisture in the crawl space, mold growth occurs, wood rot occurs, of course insects love warm, damp areas, and that bad air negatively affects the house. Now, how does that air get from the crawl space to the house? Well, you look at all the little openings, and there are a lot of them. It's everywhere you have a plumbing penetration, everywhere you have an electrical penetration. Anything that goes from the crawl space to the house usually has an opening. That opening directly links the house to the crawl space. And if you add all those openings up, in most cases you end up with an opening the size of this clipboard. That's not a good thing. So sealing those up in this closing of the crawl space process is very important. One of the things that we're most excited about with closing the crawl space, of course, is the energy savings. The energy savings associated with a properly closed crawl space is as much as 18% over a conventionally vented crawl space. Big savings, and that's something that you can put back in the bank every month of every year. Of course, also the house feels warmer in the wintertime and feels cooler in the summertime. The other thing that we get to look at is all the components within the crawl space are in a better condition. You have less problems, there's less rust, there's other things that don't occur within the crawl space that are associated with these high moisture contents. There's also less demand on the HVAC system. One of the things that closing the crawl space does reduce that moisture load that occurs within the crawl space that affects the house. It is going to get in the house over a period of time. So if we can cut that moisture level off, and it will reduce the pressures and the loads on the HVAC system. And of course your ducts won't sweat, the insulation doesn't sweat, other things are much more positive. One of the things that we do notice in a lot of newer homes is cupping hardwood floors. That's a direct association that occurs from the moisture load in the crawl space, creating this cupping effect inside the house. And who wants to walk around in a hardwood floor structure with the floors cupping? So closing the crawl space will prevent that from occurring. Of course, the added comfort. Closing your crawl space adds a lot of comfort. Warmer in the wintertime, cooler in the summertime, warmer floors, and of course peace of mind that your largest investment is being protected. Let's get the process started by making a good, thorough inspection of the crawl space area. It's very important we know what we're dealing with in that crawl space. So some of the components we're going to look at are what kind of conditions exist. Is there a lot of debris in that crawl space? Is there mold and mildew that exist? Is there insulation? Are there other components within the crawl space that we need to address in the inspection mode? Some of those components could be, is there combustion appliances? Is there a furnace in the crawl space that draws air for the combustion needs of that furnace? That has to be looked at. Are there other things in the crawl space, hot water heaters, anything else? We need to make a note of that so we know what to do to properly close the crawl space. So let's go get started. As we go through the crawl space, we're going to look at all these items that are stored and see what we need to get out. All of it will have to come out, but we can discuss that with the homeowner. Some of these items may be discarded. Other stored items can be put back in place. So we're going to go looking through all this, seeing if there's any items that we need to look at more closely. A lot of wood debris, some shovels, old table. Of course, we can see where water is entering up this upper part of the crawl space and coming down. some mold growth starting to show up in the crawl space floor system. And up here we have water. There's some water that's entered into the crawl space and sitting on top of the polyethylene vapor barrier. And here we have a plumbing leak. See that drop? Water. And here you see where the water's dripping out of this insulation coming around this plumbing pipe. And this needs to be repaired prior to closing the crawl space. See the hanging insulation? This is another indicator that during the hot summer months, the moisture load from the outside comes in and condensates on the insulation, causing it to get heavy and pulling it and stringing it down. And of course, this insulation, wet and hanging, offers absolutely no benefit for heat and thermal protection. Closing the crawl space will eliminate that problem. A lot more mold and mildew growth up in these floor joist areas. Here's another attempt to try to reduce the moisture level in the crawl space using a fan system and ducking from another area. Of course, you can see that the ducts come loose, but all you're doing with this type of system is moving more hot, moist air in the summer months from the outside into the crawl space, creating additional condensation. In the inspection process, we're looking for things like this. Wood debris in the crawl space. Certainly conditions conducive to termites and other wood-destroying insects. The other thing we're looking for is there signs of water entry into the crawl space. Here you can see an old water line. The crawl space area is wet and damp here. So that's an indication we've had water entry into this crawl space from an outside source or a plumbing leak. It appears that this crawl space is from the outside. Here's a perfect example of a homeowner trying to seal up the outside penetrations and still has a big opening. So these areas will need to be addressed in the sealing process. Always remember, during your inspection process, determine what kind of drying mechanism you're going to utilize in the closed crawl space. You have two options. One, if you have a duct system or within the crawl space, you could use the air inducer. The air inducer is simply attached to the supply side of the duct system to put conditioned air into the crawl space. If you don't have a heating and air conditioning system with ducts within the crawl space, the option that you have there is the dehumidifier. You install that, and of course you want to make sure it's centrally located, and then run your condensation line out. As we've seen, this house has water entering from the outside through the foundation wall. So we have to do something to relieve that water pressure. If you've got water coming into the crawl space, you need to fix that. You need to correct the drainage around the outside, install a sump pump and or a positive drain. Now during the inspection process, you're going to want to take several measurements around the crawl space to determine the average height that you have around the crawl space. You'll times that by the length of the crawl space walls to determine the amount of material that you're going to need for the job. Easily done. Measure from the ground up to the top of the sill. This is 48 inches. You're going to subtract 3 inches from the top, 3 inches for the bottom, the 3 inches for the termite inspection zone at the top. So 42 inches is going to be the average height here. This is a digital psychrometer which reads the relative humidity and temperature. It also has the ability to calculate the dew point. A good, inexpensive instrument. Less expensive, the X-Tech 44550. It's a kind of a pen type, reads just relative humidity and temperature, and then you'll have to calculate your dew point. But an easy instrument to carry around in your pocket. Another unique tool that we use occasionally is one that is a data logger. It's a USB, so it will data log the relative humidity and temperature. It also interfaces with your computer to let you know what that dew point is. And essentially, you can calculate over a period of time what the temperature and relative humidity was for weeks, days, or even months, depending on how frequently you set the logging device up. Very good instrument to show previous conditions of a crawl space and then post conditions after you've closed the crawl space. Here we have an X-Tech 8-in-1 unit. This unit offers us a lot of flexibility in the crawl space. It measures relative humidity, it measures the temperature, and it can also calculate the dew point. One of the other unique features is that it has an infrared thermometer. So when you have your dew points calculated, you can point the instrument. It has a little infrared dot that will show you where you're reading that temperature, and it will tell you if that unit is showing a dew point or not. So if you've got a duct system like we have here that's sweating, it's going to indicate the dew point. So let's check this pin type moisture meter instrument to verify the moisture content in the wood. What we want here is a moisture content less than 20%. So this wood is excessively damp. Here we're reading 22. So we want to dry this out. A closed crawl space does that, and as you can see in this crawl space, you have an area of condensation along the ducts. This insulation is wet, hanging down, and it's causing the stringing effect, which is typical of wet insulation in those summer months. In this crawl space, as you can see, we've got excess moisture. Obvious condensation that's occurring on this insulation, the ductwork. And then another obvious sign that there's a problem is the fungal growth. Sap-stained fungi and mold and mildew is typical in a situation like this. We'll see it on the wood itself and also on the insulation. You see the dark discoloration. Obvious sign, hot moist air is coming in the crawl space in the summer months and condensating, creating these unhealthy environments. Now, during your inspection process, always make sure to check to see if all the combustion components are properly installed and in place. Here you can see where this is a 98 plus efficient furnace that is taking the air, combustion air out with this pipe, but this particular combustion air intake has not been installed from the outside to the crawl space. So this needs to be corrected during your inspection process and before you close the crawl space. Calculating your material always introduces some questions, so here's how you do it. Here's a few tips on measuring your house. Use a measuring wheel to determine the outside parameter of the structure. Include all parts of the house. This helps you understand what your entire structure looks like. It's not a bad idea also to include things like the porches, decks, where heating and air conditioning units are, and other components that you'll need to make note of. The more exact your graph and your measurements, the better off you'll be on ordering your materials from Crawl Space Depot. See how easy it is with this measuring wheel? Now that we have this, we're making our notes and we're ready to calculate. Now we're going to calculate the overall dimensions, which is 36 by 54, and get our square footage. That's 1,944 square feet. So we need a little bit extra for the wall runs up and the overlaps where we have seams. So we're going to order about 2,300 square feet for this job of our floor liner. Now let's calculate what we need for our borofoam. So we need to measure these outside areas of what we have exposed to the outside elements. So 36 times 2 and 54 times 2 gives us 180 linear feet around the structure. So what we need to also understand is what was the overall average height of our crawl space. In this particular case, it was about 36 inches. So we have 180 feet around the outside of the structure times the 36, which is 3, equals 540 square feet. Now, each one of these boards is 4 by 8, so that's 32 square feet per board. So we're going to divide that, 540 by 32, giving us about 16 sheets. We want to add a little extra for waste and for what we need to do in our extra corners and cuts. So we're going to estimate about 20 sheets for this job. So that's 20 sheets of borofoam. So here we have our calculation. Don't forget, we'll need our tape and we'll need some other materials for sealing the cracks and crevices. A good rule of thumb is it takes 2 rolls of tape per 1,000 square feet and 1 can of Hilti foam per 1,000 square feet. So for this job, it's going to take about 3 rolls of tape and 2 cans of Hilti foam. And I'll go to crawlspace.com and place my order. As a professional, you can use the convenience of a catalog or the ease of our website, crawlspacedepot.com. It's there 24/7. The unique thing about it is you can set up an account and you have one-click reordering. So call us today to get your account set up, and we're here to help you. Now let's talk a little bit about worker safety. When you're in this nasty environment in a crawl space at the very beginning, you're exposing yourself to mold, mildew, no telling what else has been stored in that crawl space. So take some precautions to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to anything that's bad. So how do you do that? Pretty easy. You wear dust masks, respirators if the condition warrants it, and of course using proper hand protection and coveralls to make sure that you're not creating a problem for what you're exposed to in the crawl space. And then one of the most important things, eye protection. Also, when you're working in there with electrical devices, use GFI protection, because it's very important that you don't create an exposure and a risk for getting electrocuted. Another thing that you can do within the crawl space is create negative air. That's installing a fan that pulls the air from inside the crawl space and exhausts it outside. That helps prevent contaminants that you're stirring up in the crawl space from getting up into the house. Very important process, especially if you have a lot of mold issues and you're doing some of those corrective measures needed to remove and clean the mold from within the crawl space. One of the first things you have to do is get all the stuff out from under the crawl space, the stored items or junk, and look at how fast our crew's working to get it done. It's important to get it separated, know what's good and bad, and get it done. Now that the crawl space is clean, let's get to work. Here you can see the technicians removing the fiberglass insulation between the floor joists. This insulation is damaged. It obviously has mold and mildew and has been wet. So we're going to remove that in this process. Now, when you're doing this, you always want to wear your personal protection equipment, such as eye protection, your respirator or dust mask, coveralls, and gloves. You never know what you'll run into when you pull this insulation down. We've actually found live animals up above that area. So use some caution when you're doing that. They're wrapping it up, rolling it, placing it in trash bags for easy removal and disposal out of the crawl space area. They're also leaving the existing vapor barrier down to catch all the little pieces and the other debris, so when they get ready to do the final cleanup, all of that is contained within that old vapor barrier. Perfect example of what we find sometimes when we pull this insulation down. We had mice creating a little harborage area in and above that insulation area. So we'll make sure we get all that removed and cleaned up. Now, once you've gotten most of the big stuff out, it's time to grade the crawl space and rake it out and get it looking good. It's important to understand that if you don't do this, you have pieces of cinder or cinder block or brick, it could puncture the liner. Plus, it's uncomfortable to walk on or crawl on. So get all that stuff cleaned out, use a rake, move it all to one point, and you'll have a beautiful liner that lays flat. The Mega Dry dehumidifier, specially designed for use in crawl spaces, especially closed crawl spaces. What we have here is a port on both sides, so you have filter replacement capabilities that you can access from either side of the dehumidifier. It also has the ability to hook the condensation line up on either side. Comes with already collared 8-inch duct line attachments, so that if you need to run the air or the return from tighter areas of the crawl space, you are ready to go with that. This dehumidifier is manufactured in the United States. It's Energy Star rated, 70 pints per day. Great dehumidifier for the use in a closed crawl space. The warranty is 1 year on parts and material, 5 years on the compressor. So Mega Dry, the best dehumidifier for your closed crawl space. Now we're going to install the Mega Dry dehumidifier. We've come up with a couple of quick tips. Of course, you can do a number of things. Just hold it up. We are going to hang the Mega Dry in this particular situation. We've put nails in and put 2 temporary hangers at the level that we're going to want the dehumidifier set. This helps stabilize it so that we can get it good and level for the permanent installation. So we're going to work that out, get it done real quick. It's pretty easy with 2 guys. Do one side. And then the other side. And as you see, we're not perfectly level, but we're close enough to start our strapping. Now that we've got the Mega Dry temporarily hung, we're going to go ahead and install all 4 of the hangers and get it ready to actually attach to the floor joist. One little quick tip, go ahead and get your screw started in the strap, because that way you don't have to hold it. Note there's 2 lengths of screws. The short are the screws that you use for the hangers being attached to the Mega Dry unit, and the longer ones are the ones that would go into the wood floor joist. Don't over tighten the straps, just a good snug is all you need. Now, when you're ready to start installing the straps to the joist, you can go ahead, put your level on the unit, and get it close to being right side to side. That's right. The straps have 3 holes so that you've got opportunity to put a couple of screws in it if you need to. There again, you're just snugging it up. Now that we have the Mega Dry hung and you've got the ability to run positive drain for the condensation line, make sure you use the P-trap that's enclosed. This is very important to keep the unit operating efficiently. And then you just hook up your drain line and you're ready to cut it on. Now that we have the Mega Dry installed, we don't, in this particular situation, have the ability to run the condensation line out with a positive drain, so we're going to use a condensation pump. This is a specially designed unit for this particular Mega Dry. It comes with the pre-drilled holes for mounting to the side. It also comes with the tubing that attaches to the included nipple and the tube that goes down into the condensation pump. Always remember to take and put your condensation pump nipple that has an angle into this part. You don't need the P-trap. Now to finish it off, we put a little loop in our line, attach it, and you want this loop. It's part of that drain stoppage that you need. Now we've got it installed, it's time to cut it on. There's a dial to the left. You want to set it in that ideal setting, which is between 50 and 60%, and let it do its job. And see how quiet it is. Another option for the Mega Dry is to place it on the ground. This unit comes with adjustable legs so that you can level it on place. Good thing to use some 4-inch solid block. Really good to use. Okay. And we're level. This is the Crawl Space Depot Supply Air Inducer. It's designed to put 50 CFM of air into the closed crawl space. It's built with the butterfly damper that is required by most codes. It also has a constant airflow regulator that will only let 50 CFM pass through this unit. It's pre-gasketed, pre-designed with a collar, so it's easy to install into most trunk line systems. Always remember to put this label up. This damper only operates by gravity, so you want to keep this unit running level outside of the duct and with this label up. So our technician's going to go ahead and show you how we cut the hole and install it. Pick a good place. Some ducts you're going to want to be able to strap it up. Now this is a preformed fiberglass duct, easy to drill through. He's going to peel the protective coating tape off. This gives us our sticky surface to attach and also seals this unit to the duct. He's going to line it up, making sure his label is straight up and down. Then he's going to put a few screws in it. It's not a bad idea to use a little bit of duct strapping to strap the end of that unit up so it doesn't tilt down. An added level of security to make sure that that unit operates efficiently. This unit's self-contained and will last for years and years and years. Another thing we found useful is we flag all of our units in the crawl space so they're easy to find. There's thousands of places to hide these units, and sometimes you need a little help finding it so that you can check that unit annually to make sure everything is operating properly. Now our technician's preparing an ultra-low volume applicator to apply DSV into the crawl space. He's going to treat the soil to kill contaminants such as fungal material, bacteria, and viruses in the entire crawl space area. Normal application rate, you should follow the label, but in most cases you're going to use 2 ounces per gallon of water. Mold Clean, great product to use on wood and other surfaces in the crawl space. Gallon's ready to go. It's pre-mixed. 1 gallon covers about 150 to 200 square feet in the crawl space. You can apply it to the wooden members, also to block walls that have mold, mildew, or fungus on them. Great product. Easy to use in a crawl space because you can carry it with you in the gallon jug and just dump it in as you need more and additional product through the process. Now we're going to demonstrate the use of Mold Clean. Mold Clean is a ready-to-use product that cleans wooden surfaces, brick, and other material that have molds and mildews on them. Simply what you want to do is apply in a section of the wood, wetting it to point of runoff. I usually do a section at a time so that I can keep track with what I'm doing. Also, if you've got mold, mildew, or algae on block walls, simply treat that also. Very good product, ready to go. Borer Care Concentrate, great termiticide. What we're going to do today is utilize this product to prevent and treat for any termites along the sill and the sill plate. We're going to treat 2 feet out into the crawl space area and the wooden members and down the entire foundation wall from the ground all the way up to the sill. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to shortly be covering all of that area with borer foam. So we want that termite protection that lasts and lasts and lasts behind that borer foam before the application. During our inspection, as we have found in a lot of houses, we have water entering through the foundation wall. This particular house, we found it coming in along the foundation and the footing. What this technician's performing is an excavation of that soil along that area so that we can install a French drain system on the interior foundation that will remove the water that gets into that trench and carry it down to the lowest point into a sump pump. You want to make sure that you're cleaning that soil off of the footing, getting that area ready to put your drain line in, and then we'll use our loose lock aggregate. The next process after the ditch is dug is installing the pipe along the ditch line, running it all along the low point and getting it ready to put the loose lock aggregate in place. You always want to use a perforated pipe as opposed to a leach bed pipe. This has the slits all the way around the pipe to allow water entry into the pipe, and then it runs down the pipe. So just a little tip for the installation and what to buy. Now we're going to install the loose lock over our drain line that we previously installed. Loose lock is a lightweight aggregate that's designed not to compact. It's stable so it won't degenerate in the soil, and it's very light. Imagine bringing this much material in an aggregate material like granite. It's a lot of weight you're having to carry around as opposed to a few pounds. It works very well in close crawl spaces. You can transfer it out of the bigger bags into smaller bags that you can pull it into the crawl space. As you see, the technicians are working it in and around the pipe. One of the things you want to always remember is loose lock will float. It's very lightweight. As a result, you want to put a filter fabric over top of your loose lock, and then the soil that you've excavated off of the ditch and out of the ditch, you will backfill back over it. This makes a nice, even plane along the foundation wall. And you'll see our technician, he'll just run it right on down the ditch line. We've already installed a little bit of the loose lock around the basin. Now we're going to set the pump in the basin to give it a little weight while we're installing the rest of the loose lock around the exterior of our basin. This basin's pre-made, it's designed for crawl spaces, easy application, and the loose lock goes in now around it, holding one hand in place. Now we're going to place the loose lock around the basin and the pipe to allow for water to drain into it. As you can see with this basin, it has another hole in it. That hole allows us to utilize that basin lid as kind of a drain. If there were a plumbing hole or plumbing leak or anything that occurred within the crawl space, it would run into this basin. As I said earlier, you always want the basin at the lowest point of the crawl space. As you can see, loose lock is easily maneuvered in the crawl space to level it out, make it an easy drainage aggregate in and around the pipe, the pump, and the entire drainage system. Now we're going to install the filter fabric, and we'll cover over the loose lock and the filter fabric with soil. Here we have the two Zoller pumps that we keep in stock. We have the M53, which is a cast iron heavy duty pump, very heavy, a good pump to use where there's a lot of water conditions, and then a lighter weight M72 that can be installed in the same type of application. Both of these, as well as the tri-check valve and the basin, can be bought separately. However, we also have them in kits at a reduced price. The kit contains either of these pumps, the tri-check valve, and the basin. So you have everything that you need to start the process of installing your drain system in the crawl space. Now we're going to go ahead and install the pipe that's exiting the sump pump. You want to tighten it down, not too tight, just enough to snug it in place. We put the sump pump in, extend the line out through the lid, install the lid prior to gluing, and then put the catch basin lid back on, install the tri-check valve, and exit the line outside the facility. One thing you always want to be concerned about is where you're exiting this water on the outside, and make sure that it doesn't have the ability to recycle and enter back into the crawl space. So take that into consideration when you're locating the exit point. The unique thing about this tri-check valve, it has several neat components. One is the backflow preventer. This stops the water from surging back down into the pump and basin after the pump cuts off. And if you don't have something like this installed, a check valve, it will cause a cycling event for the pump, thus wearing your pump out much more prematurely. It also has a valve that you could cut off if you need to do a service, and a union so that if you need to work on the basin and or repair the pump, you can undo this area and disconnect it with this union. So a great piece of equipment to have with your sump pump kit. Before we put the liner down, we want to make sure that we treat the soil with Bacazap. Bacazap is an odor neutralizer and eliminator. It makes the crawl space smell good, takes away those musty, nasty odors. Make sure you get good, complete coverage. This is a great instrument. We use the Hilti crack and joint foam to seal up all the cracks and crevices around the structure that we're closing the crawl space. But you can use it anywhere, both inside the house, in the crawl space, on the outside. It has UV protection. The other unique thing is it meets the flame and fire spread, so it's a fire block material. We use this on sealing the holes between the crawl space and the house. Great tool. The other unique thing about this type of applicator is you can leave the can connected to the instrument or the gun for a number of days without losing all the foam that you haven't used. It has a cutoff in the tip and a cutoff right here inside the base of this connection point. The other unique thing, each can equals about 21 caulking tubes. That's a lot less change outs that you have to do in the process. So this gun, very useful in the crawl space, also has an adjustment so you can adjust either a thicker or a thinner string coming out, and it has a trigger lock. Great tool, inexpensive, actually helps you move faster through the crawl space on sealing and closing up all of these cracks. Now we're going to show you how to close the vents. As you can see, we've pre-cut these so that they're easier to deal with in the crawl space. A lot of times we can use existing and scrap pieces of foam board that we have left over from the wall installation. Another thing to notice is one side of that's painted black. That's so that when we put it facing out, black facing out into the vent, you're not going to see the white insulation board. It makes it kind of go away and you don't notice it from the outside. Another little trick. Also notice how that's friction fit. He's cut it just a tad bit larger. It's going to fit in there real good and tight against the mud seal and each side of the block wall. And he's going to push it in, then he's also going to seal that up with a Hilti foam. Now that that's done, you have cut off all that outside air infiltration that occurs in a vented crawl space. Great job. Now we're going to talk about how we install header blocks. This is adding insulation value along those outside rim joists that give us that thermal protection that we need. So we pre-cut these, slide them in, and of course, don't forget to check with your local code requirements on what that R value needs to be along that outside rim joist area. Don't forget to come back and seal around all those cracks and crevices when you install that header insulation board. Now don't forget to seal all the penetrations between the outside of the structure and the crawl space. Using the Hilti foam is easily done, makes a permanent penetration sealer. This is another great place for the Hilti foam. Here we have a big gap because of this inverted pipe. So what we're going to do is make several passes in here to seal up that area. Keep in mind that this foam is going to keep expanding beyond your first application. Now when we bring our floor liner up, it's going to come up and attach here. We will then reseal at that point. Now we're preparing to wrap the piers. Our technician's going to measure out about 30 inches. That 30 inches gives us the dimension up the pier and out on the crawl space floor. Now, this being a square column pier, he's just going to mark out 4 different sections plus about a half of a section and make his cut for the dimension that he'll need to wrap around the pier. Another little trick is fold over the top seam. That gives us a double layer to nail through for our attachment to the pier line. It's best to try to find an area along the mortar joint. Always try to leave that foot out. Make that adjustment. And then he will use the Hilti tool, 3/4 inch pin and a 1 inch washer. That's a GX 120 to fasten the corner of the material to the one edge of the pier. And he's going to cut to make his separation so when he wraps around that pier, he keeps his liner looking good. Notice that this is a 6 mil fiberglass reinforced poly material. And there we have a completed pier wrap with our 6 mil wall liner. Great job. Now it's time to move to the next one. Now we're going to fasten the clear wall liner along this interior wall. This wall doesn't require insulation because it's a separation wall between 2 sections of the crawl space. So we use the 6 mil fiberglass reinforced wall liner. We attach it with the GX 120 tool. This tool does not require special training and or licensing. We use a 3/4 inch pin or nail and a 1-inch washer. This permanently attaches it to the wall. We leave our 1 foot out, we fold the top seam over and the cut to make it a nice, even looking cut across the top of the wall liner. Then when we bring our floor liner in, we will lay it over top of our wall liner and tape it to make a complete seal. Once the wall liner is installed, we want to seal it. Now we can use the Hilti foam or the White Lightning 3006. You always want to use a product that doesn't off-gas any bad odors. So the White Lightning is a water-based material. We install that seals it to the wall, gives us a great look. We're installing insulation on the outside walls. It's very important to understand that what you want to do is create this thermal envelope. So if you don't have insulation between your floor joists, installing an appropriate insulation board on the outside walls protects your investment from this thermal energy loss that you would receive every month of every year. So installing Borafoam, very important. One of the reasons that we like Borafoam is because it has termite prevention built within the board itself. So installing this on the outside walls that are exposed to the weather stops that outside, either hot in the summertime, cold in the wintertime, from negatively influencing your house. Our technician's got a measurement from within the crawl space on the height of the insulation board, what he needs. In this particular case, it's how much he's going to cut off. As you can see, he is taking that measurement, he's scoring that board, holding the one side, using the end of the tape to score the board to give him the cut that he needs to make. Then he's going to take an X-Acto knife, type blade knife, and make a cut. Go back and cut it again. There we have the finished cut on the piece of Borafoam that he'll need to take into the crawl space. Now we're ready to install the Borafoam on the wall. We take our Hilti foam and we're creating a seal along that wall and at the joint where the two foam boards connect. This keeps our 6 mil liner, keeping the moisture on the outside and dry conditions in the crawl space. Always try to remember to leave your 3-inch termite inspection gap. Check with local codes to make that applicable. And then we're using our Hilti fastener to fasten that into the wall itself. Don't forget to wear your personal protection equipment. Usually on a 4-foot board, you only need 2 fasteners per board. Now, if you've got a tight crawl space door or a tight crawl space and you can't get a big sheet in, we have found that if you split the board half in two, we have pre-measured this outside, we've cut the back side half in two, leaving the 3 mil in the front, we can bring that board in, unfold it, and then attach it to the wall. So our technician's going to apply it the same way he would the regular board, putting the Hilti foam up, sealing that top edge and the abut edge or the abutting edge. And here you're going to want to put 2 fasteners, one on each side of the cut of the Borafoam board. Occasionally you'll run into these tight crawl spaces where you won't have an opportunity to get a full piece in. So it makes it an easier job for you to accomplish that Borafoam installation. Job well done. Prior to installing your liner, another good idea is to install Niband granular bait. It'll kill the ants, the crickets, slugs, snails, and other unwanted insects that may be hiding in that crawl space. Johnny's made his measurement in the crawl space, rolling the liner out, black side down, so we're keeping the upper side, the white, clean and pristine. He's going to measure it out. This particular cut's 14 feet. The roll is 20 foot wide when you roll it out, so his cut's going to be a 14 by 20 foot cut. So he rolls the roll back slightly, uses the edge of the roll as his straight edge to make his cut. Keeping a good sharp knife is important. This liner is very tough. He's going to make his fold so he's ready to install the liner in the crawl space when he gets in, so he doesn't have to guess which way it goes. That's his 1 foot that he's rolling back that's going to go up the foundation wall or his overlap, depending on how he has it laid out. Then he's going to fold it in place. So when he gets in, he'll just unfold it, pull the liner open, and you've got the liner installed in the crawl space. Now we're starting the poly on the back side. Notice how the poly is the white side, we keep it up and keep it good and clean, making sure that we're leaving the right spacing up the wall as we're placing the poly down on the crawl space floor. We're temporarily attaching some sod staples, so that keeps the poly in place while we're working to make sure it's good and flat. Usually it's best to have two people. It's a little easier to unfold the poly, as you can see, to get it laying good and flat in the crawl space. Obviously, there's different thicknesses of polyethylene. This particular type that we sell is fiberglass reinforced and comes in many different thicknesses, from 6 mil all the way to 20 mil. We always try to work as much as we can off the good clean side until we get most of it down, and then we'll change into our regular clothes and out of our coveralls to work the rest of the process. Sometimes the soil is extremely difficult to hand push the sod staples, so you may need a little hammer to get it in place. Notice on that back wall, you see that we've not run it up the foot because we have our wall liner down and running out, so we will tape that seam at the base of that wall. We're just taping that seam all the way up to make this one uniform vapor retarder. Now that we have the liner down and taped, it's time to attach the liner to the bore foam. So we tape little pieces along the way to get the liner attached up so that when we come back with our full run of tape, everything is ready to go and it's much easier to accomplish that feat. The unique thing about the bore foam, it already has 6 mil poly worth of poly on the board itself, so it is our vapor retarder as well as the insulation needs for that outside wall. Now we're ready to come back and make our complete run. Because we want a complete seal between that bore foam and that floor liner. Now sometimes when you've got 2 people, it's easier to do because the one person can kind of stretch that tape out, get the liner ready, and then the next person's going to fold that in place. Now that we're about finished, it's time for us to install our thermohygrometer. This unit has 2 things: a sending unit that stays in the crawl space and the receiving unit that goes in the house. Now we install this somewhere in the midsection, not right in front of the dehumidifier, the air enforcer. We also put a little flagging tape here so that we can come back and find it easily when it's time to replace those batteries. We hang this unit, and then this unit's ready to go in the house for the homeowner to validate everything that's occurring within that closed crawl space. After you finish closing the crawl space, it'll be a good idea to install a high water alarm. What this does is let you know if a pipe is leaking or has burst or there's been some water getting into that crawl space. It will give you a loud audible alarm. It has 2 easy attachment, a Velcro connection on the wall and a Velcro connection that you can install it on top of your sump pump lid or on just the crawl space floor itself. Now don't forget one of the most important components, which is the crawl space door. This is a nice size crawl space door, but you want to insulate it, you want to make sure it's airtight, and we're going to do that to make up these extra little joints because there's a piece of wood back there. By using our Hilti foam, to make that complete seal. The other thing, you can use the insulation fasteners with some screws, depending on the thickness of the back base that you want to connect, to hold this insulation board in place till everything sets. If you need to make it a little prettier, you can certainly tape up around it. Another important thing we want to do is put a sign on the door or in the crawl space that tells everyone this is a closed crawl space system, which must be left intact, must be left in place. It is a responsibility of anyone that enters this crawl space not to damage, tear, or remove that liner. And if they do, they need to contact the homeowner and or the installer to make sure those corrections have been repaired. Good advertising too, to let others know who did this beautiful job. A closed crawl space is very simply eliminating the outside air that normally occurs in a ventilated crawl space. That's where you have vents around the outside of your house that allow air from the outside to enter the crawl space to help in the drying mechanism that used to be needed within a crawl space. But that was a common practice, especially years ago when we didn't have air conditioning. Several things that you benefit from are indoor air quality is improved. Of course, energy savings, as much as 18% on the average home compared to a crawl space that is ventilated to the outside air. Now, if you have an older home that you don't have insulation in, your energy efficiency is going to be much better than that. And of course, everything within the environment in that crawl space is much better. If you've got any questions, please feel free to call us on our toll-free number. We're always there to help you.